Olympic National Park is an enormous natural wonderland full of ancient rainforests, towering mountains, and rugged Pacific coastline. The national park covers nearly 1 million acres of Washington's Olympic Peninsula in the far northwestern corner of the United States. The wide variety of impressive landscapes feels like they've packed multiple national parks into one that's so remarkable it's been designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site. In today's video, we'll cover some of the best things to do and eat while visiting the sprawling and magnificent Olympic National Park and Peninsula. Most visitors start their journey at the Seattle-Tacoma International Airport before embarking along the Olympic Peninsula Loop, which is a 300-mile road around the peninsula and gives access to everything the national park has to offer. From the airport, you can travel north through Seattle to catch a ferry, or you can stick to the highways and head south through Tacoma. We took this clockwise southern route. There's a few cool things to see on the way to the national park. If it's a relatively clear day, which is never guaranteed in the Pacific Northwest, Point Ruston makes a great quick stop. It's a cute waterfront community on the Puget Sound, with views of Mount Rainier in the distance. You can stroll the Ruston Way Water Walk, or take in the view from Dune Peninsula at Point Defiance Park. Continuing westward to Olympic National Park, you'll pass Olympia, Washington's capital city. If you're into that sort of thing, you can pop off the highway to check out the State Capitol building, which offers tours to the public. One cool thing about Olympia is they have a moon tree, which is a Douglas fir tree growing from seeds that went to the moon on Apollo 14. After Olympia, you'll pass Aberdeen, the birthplace of legendary Nirvana frontman Kurt Cobain, and eventually you'll reach Olympic National Park in the impressive Quinault Valley. Quinault has some of the most fertile ecosystems in the world, with extensive old-growth rainforests and some of the largest trees of their species. The world's largest spruce tree stands tall next to a campground on Lake Quinault. This Sitka spruce is thought to be 1,000 years old and is an enormous 59 feet in circumference. It's super easy to reach with a 5-minute walk from Big Spruce Trailhead. It's an impressive site that doesn't require a ton of effort to get to. Quinault also has massive Douglas fir and western hemlock trees, though the biggest are kept secret for preservation and research. Your easiest way to see old-growth rainforest is the half-mile Quinault Rainforest Trail Loop. This interpretive trail is family-friendly with benches and signs describing aspects of old-growth ecology, and is even wheelchair accessible for the first 850 feet. You'll ascend through Big Tree Grove's centuries-old Douglas fir trees and overlook Willoughby Gorge and Creek. It's also connected to longer trails in the Quinault National Recreation Trail system that lets you get more immersed in the ancient temperate rainforest and see things like Cascade Falls, Gatton Creek Falls, and more mushrooms than I've ever seen in my life. Quinault also has easy access to roadside waterfalls. Merriman Falls and Bunch Falls are decently sized and don't require any hiking. And while you're out this way, you might as well drive the scenic Quinault Rainforest Loop Drive, which is a 31-mile road through thick forests circling beautiful Lake Quinault. After enjoying Quinault, it's time to head to the striking Pacific coast at Kalaloch. This is where you'll find long stretches of beach and the famous Tree of Life. This Sitka spruce tree clings to the cliffs despite the ground eroding underneath it. Its visible roots and windswept canopy give it a mystical look, sort of resembling an oversized bonsai tree. Further up Highway 101 is the Kalaloch Big Cedar Nature Trail. As you can guess, this trail leads to a massive tree, a western red cedar that's nearly 1,000 years old. This is a very accessible trail with parking just over 100 feet from the ancient tree, which was once the third largest of its species, until a storm broke it in half in 2014. Its standing section is still immense, and the fallen portion is in the process of decomposing and becoming a nurse log, feeding future generations of giants. The trail continues past the fallen behemoth to a grove of other huge western red cedars. The total trail is 1 mile out and back and is definitely worth your time to explore. Continuing on Highway 101, you'll soon reach the popular and dramatic Ruby Beach. There's a nice overlook near the parking lot, giving you a view of the tide pools and monumental sea stacks. You'll pass through a short section of forest before reaching the beach, which has huge pieces of driftwood and cool rock formations sprinkled along the coast. Ruby Beach gives you the classic Pacific Northwest beach experience and is especially beautiful at sunset. North of Ruby Beach is one of the most famous and unique rainforests in the entire world, the Hoh Rainforest. This old-growth, temperate rainforest is home to enormous trees covered in thick moss thanks to the area's moderate climate and perpetually damp environment. There's so much plant life in the area that scientists think it has the most biomass of any region on the planet. One easy way you can explore this unique ecosystem at the Hoh Rainforest is the Hall of Mosses Trail, an iconic 1-mile loop that takes you through prehistoric forests and features a grove of large maple trees draped with distinctive thick moss. This is one of the most popular things to see in the entire Olympic National Park, so get there close to sunrise or way later in the afternoon. Seriously, when we left the rainforest around noon, there was an estimated 3-hour line of cars waiting to enter. Plan ahead so you don't have to waste your vacation sitting in line. Another great trail in the Hoh Rainforest is the Spruce Nature Trail. This loop is just over 1 mile and gives you a look at old and new growth trees as well as the Hoh River, one of 10 major river systems in Olympic National Park. The Spruce Nature Trail is also nice because it's way less crowded than the more popular Hall of Mosses, but the scenery is just as good. The last trail we'll recommend in the Hoh Rainforest is the Hoh River Trail. This one was nice because it has even fewer people than the other routes and has some of the largest trees we saw in the Hoh Rainforest. It goes more than 17 miles to Glacier Meadows, but we only did a small portion to the river before turning around. Also, don't miss the Hoh Rainforest Visitor Center. It's a good first stop to talk to the park rangers, learn about the area, and get that precious park merch. Moving on from the Hoh Rainforest, our next stop is the town of Forks. Forks, Washington has just over 3,000 people and became somewhat famous thanks to the Twilight movies. They're still squeezing everything they can out of that franchise. For most of its history, Forks wasn't the home of sparkly vampires. It was a major hub for the lumber industry, and still is. You can explore this heritage at the Forks Timber Museum. It only costs $5 to enter and is a fun way to spend an hour and get a dose of culture. They have old tools used by the logging industry, as well as interesting mock-ups to give a glimpse of what life was like as a lumberjack decades ago. They even had an old canoe and a whale vertebrae on display. While the timber industry wasn't always kind to the environment, the state of Washington has made a serious effort to ensure modern lumber practices are way more sustainable. With the surrounding area sparsely populated, Forks is one of the few places to grab a bite to eat. There's a decently sized grocery store if that's more your speed, but Forks also has a cluster of restaurants. There's a great barbecue stand called D&K Barbecue. It's a local favorite and has amazing smoked brisket with sides like coleslaw and mac and cheese. Across the parking lot is another stand, Yabe's Mexican Cuisine, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but we definitely recommend the birria tacos. And last but not least, there's Sully's Drive-In, which is a classic burger joint. Forks is pretty centrally located on the western side of the peninsula and often serves as a base to explore other sites in the national park, including one of the coolest beaches in Olympic National Park, Rialto Beach. Rialto Beach is popular for good reason. It's one of the most picturesque beaches in the Pacific Northwest, with huge driftwood all along the coastline and monumental sea stacks, which are huge rock formations jutting out of the water. You'll want to visit Rialto Beach during low tide, when the water lowers a few feet and you can check out the cool tide pools holding various marine life like anemones, mussels, snails, and even starfish. Low tide also gives you access to the famous Hole in the Wall. You'll walk nearly 1.5 miles north of the parking lot, past massive driftwood, to reach a natural arch formed in the rock known as Hole in the Wall. You can even walk under the arch and see all the little creatures in the tide pools. Be sure to check the tide chart online or at the visitor centers and ranger stations to time your hikes for low tide. Continuing on the Olympic Peninsula Loop, the next stop is actually not in the national park. Cape Flattery, the northwesternmost point in the contiguous USA, is on the Makah Reservation. You'll need a $20 permit from the tribe to access the area, which you can get online or on site, and it's definitely worth it. Cape Flattery has several lookouts overseeing the tall and dramatic cliffs. The panoramic views are very impressive. You might get lucky and have sunny weather, but the dense fog, which is more likely, also adds a mystical aura to the experience. You might even be able to spot migrating whales from the overlooks. And since you've already bought the Macaw Reservation permit, you might as well visit the nearby Shai Shai Beach and the Ozette Loop, which require some hiking but give you more cool views of sea stacks and tide pools. From the northwesternmost point of the peninsula moving east, the next major thing you'll want to check out is the Duc Valley, home to some hot springs, amazing waterfalls, ancient forests, and the Salmon Cascades. During certain times of the year, salmon and trout can be seen jumping up the series of cascades, making their way upriver to spawn. These fish are born upriver, then leave to spend most of their life in the ocean, before returning to the river to lay their eggs. The Salmon Cascades on the Duc River are some of the best places to see this amazing migration take place. Coho salmon make their run September through November, while steelhead trout run in late March and May. The National Park Service notes that less than 5% of the original lowland forest remains, making places like the ancient Groves Trail in the Duc Valley so magnificent. This peaceful half-mile loop passes by the river and through moss-covered giants that have stood here for centuries. Ancient Groves Trail is mainly flat, with a few steeper sections and the occasional boardwalk. There's parking along the road at the trailhead, and it's a good, easy trail for most people. By far the most popular attraction in the Duc Valley is Duc Falls, a nearly 50-foot tall series of waterfalls where the river splits into 4 channels. The trail is just over a mile and a half out and back along a well-maintained path. There's a bridge that gives you awesome overhead views of the powerful falls, or you can check it out from along the riverbank further upstream. We recommend visiting in the early morning or evening when the sunlight filters through the dense forest just right and dances upon the water. Our next stop is magnificent Lake Crescent, a stunning glacial lake surrounded by mountains. This lake has some of the bluest water we've ever seen, thanks to the supreme clarity of the water. This large lake is popular for camping, boating, swimming, and hiking. The Devil's Punch Bowl on the lake's north side is a fun and popular swimming hole for people and their 4-legged friends. The path from the parking lot is paved, making it easy to walk or bike to the Punch Bowl, which is a 40-foot deep depression formed by a prehistoric landslide. Swimmers enjoy diving off the bridge, but you can also just take in the area's natural beauty. Again, I can't stress enough how amazingly blue this water is. On the south side of Lake Crescent, Marymere Falls is a gorgeous 60-foot waterfall in the midst of dense temperate rainforest. Getting here requires a 2-mile round-trip hike via a well-maintained path. Marymere Falls is a photographer's dream and definitely worth a visit. The last thing we'll suggest at Lake Crescent is to see it from above. The summit of Mount Storm King gives you probably the best view you'll get of Lake Crescent. Mount Storm King Trail is only 2 miles and starts off relatively flat, but eventually it climbs over 2,000 feet. This maintained but steep trail passes through thick forests before the vegetation thins out and you get some amazing views of the surrounding mountains and of course Lake Crescent. You'll have to brave some rope sections to reach the peak, but even prior to the rope sections, you'll be treated to some amazing scenery, as long as the fog holds out. This hike won't be for everyone, but as far as climbing mountains goes, this is a rewarding one for beginners. After Lake Crescent, you'll reach the largest city on the Olympic Peninsula, Port Angeles. Many people use Port Angeles as their hotel or Airbnb home base while exploring the north side of the peninsula, though it's a bit too far for day trips to the west side. One of the best things to do from Port Angeles is go whale watching. You can take guided full or half-day boat tours out of Port Angeles to see species like orcas, gray whales, humpbacks, and minke whales. Whales are most active here between May and October, though you can see whales all year round. In fact, companies like the Puget Sound Express even guarantee you'll see a whale or you'll get a voucher for another cruise. In addition to whales, you might also see seals, sea lions, and plenty of birds. Besides Port Angeles, you can also take whale watching cruises from nearby Port Townsend. After a few hours on the water, you might be feeling a hankering for seafood. Well, we've got you covered. Right next to the port where you took the whale watching tour is the appropriately named Fish and Crab Shack. The Dungeness crab sandwich hit the spot, and their clam chowder was some of the best we've ever had. We definitely recommend Fish and Crab Shack. Another great local spot is Yodelin, which is popular for their soup and seafood. One quick and easy outing you can do from Port Angeles is to Madison Falls by the Elwha River. The waterfall takes less than 5 minutes to walk to from the parking lot, making it one of the most accessible sites in the entire national park. It's stroller and wheelchair friendly, and the waterfall itself is an impressive 60 feet tall. Madison Falls is a great bang for your buck location thanks to its supreme ease of access. Port Angeles is at the foothills of the Olympic mountain range, with Hurricane Ridge just a short drive away. Rising over 5,000 feet tall, Hurricane Ridge offers impressive views of the surrounding wilderness and the tallest mountain in the national park, Mount Olympus. The drive to the top is beautiful and lined with several overlooks to take in the majestic scenery. There's plenty of parking near the top and even some campsites, but unfortunately the Mountaintop Visitor Center burnt down in 2023. The most popular hike at Hurricane Ridge is Hurricane Hill, which is just over 3 miles round trip on a paved path that gains 700 feet in elevation. The views from the top and all along the way are gorgeous, and we even saw deer and this cute little marmot up here, so be prepared to encounter wildlife. Some of the best mountain views we found came from Obstruction Point. From the main Hurricane Ridge parking lot, you'll want a 4-wheel drive vehicle to drive the rugged cliffside 1-lane gravel road 8 miles to the Obstruction Point parking lot. From here, you can take several trails into the heart of the Olympic mountain range. For a simple day hike, we suggest the Grand Valley Trail toward Grand Lake and Moose Lake. You'll walk the ridge line and get views of the Olympic wilderness to the north and south before descending into the valley where there are some pristine alpine lakes. This trail goes on for miles and miles, so take it as far as you want before turning around. Moving into the final stretch along the east side of the Olympic Peninsula, the pristine waters of the Hood Canal make a great environment for raising oysters, and you'll see oyster farms all along the coast. You can taste these famous oysters at places like Hama Hama Oyster Saloon. One popular site on the Olympic Peninsula's east side is Staircase Rapids on the Skokomish River. You'll pass stunning Lake Cushman on the way to the trailhead. Staircase Rapids Trail is a 2-mile loop through old-growth forest and gives you peaceful views of the river. And that concludes the Olympic Peninsula Loop. Check out these videos for more travel guides. Love you all, and have a great day.